Only 3 games remain on the basketball schedule in the regular season for the Duke University men's basketball team in the 2022-2023 season, and Duke might be playing their best basketball at just the right time. Is this team poised for a run in March? We discussed that here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us on this Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, as we're going to be discussing everything going on in the world of Duke basketball ahead of March Madness. 3 games remain on the schedule for the Duke Blue Devils, and so I want to bring on my good pal, Conor ONeill, to discuss all things Duke men's basketball here on today's program. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to our podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Stay up to speed on everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Watch us on YouTube each and every day. Press that subscribe button. Leave us your thoughts and comments on YouTube. I love interacting with fans that way. And follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. And I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Without further ado, I'm very thrilled to bring on my good pal, Conor ONeill, who joins us now here on today's show. It's great to see you once again this week. I hope you're doing well, Conor.
Doing great. There's no middle ground in basketball season. You're either at the beginning of it or you're at the end of it. Now we're really into the end of it. So.
We really are, man. It's now or never time for so many of these teams. As I mentioned, just 3 games left in the regular season for Duke and for so many other teams across the sport. And Duke finds themselves all of a sudden riding a 3-game winning streak. With 2 more games set to be played at home inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. What have you thought of the play over the last week?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think they're playing some of their best basketball this year. I think a lot of that has to do with having some roster continuity for really the first time. When Dariq Whitehead had come back, then Jeremy Roach has the foot injury against Purdue, and he plays through it and plays well, and then doesn't play well, and then he comes back, and then you have Dariq Whitehead go down again. Derek Lively has dealt with the calf injury at the beginning of the year. He was sick in the same game Whitehead was. So now what you're seeing is a team that's been able to practice consistently together. I feel like I'm echoing John Shire, so I'm giving coach speak, but you know, at some point we have to trust the coach speak. They're not just making stuff up to say it. So when he talks about how important it is that, you know, guys like Tyrese Proctor and Jeremy Roach have been through consistent practices, then that's why you see a few more lobs going up to Derek Lively. They have a better feel for where he wants to catch the ball. His catch radius is insane, by the way. So
yes, it is.
I'm not sure how much adjusting there has to be there. You just throw it up to him and he goes and gets it. But yeah, you're starting to see finally the benefits of some continuity there.
There was a lob that Lively caught in the Syracuse game over the weekend that I still don't understand how he was able to reach back, catch it, and finish. And make the play there.
Yeah, we've got to normalize. We've got to normalize in basketball the phrase catch radius. Like that's something you hear all the time in football. You hear about it, you know, guys like Randy Moss and you go on and on with the list of receivers. But yeah, basketball is the same thing. Like some guys, you got to put it right in a specific spot for them to flush a lob. Others are like Derek, man. You just throw it anywhere close, and you feel like he's going to go up and make a play on it. He's so twitchy. He's got such great coordination. It's you know, the part that stands out to you, the coordination, is how he's able to guard on the perimeter and how connected his feet and hands are, that he can move with guys that are like a foot shorter than him and still stay in front of him. but there's a whole nother part to his athleticism where he can go up and get the ball in a lot of different places that are tougher to get to for a lot of other guys.
Competition aside, Duke is able to knock off Louisville earlier in the week on Monday night, 79-62, and then also had the 22-point victory over Syracuse. We had seen earlier in the season those quick Saturday, Monday turnarounds were not too kind for Duke, although in those instances, Duke was the home team on Saturday, road team on Monday. This time it was flipped. And again, you can factor in the level of competition, right? Louisville has only won 4 basketball games this season. It does feel like from the outside they are improving a little bit, although the wins aren't necessarily coming along. What was other big reasons why Duke was able to pull off the Saturday, Monday win, something they hadn't done already this year?
Yeah, they really dialed in to this one. Not to say they weren't dialed in before, but I do think you have an emotional 2-point win against Miami on that Saturday, and then you go to Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech, I think, shot 60 or 70% in the first half of that game. I mean, I was up there in Blacksburg. It was just an offensive clinic for the Hokies in the first half. And you know, some teams are going to make some shots on you. That's just going to happen, but not to that level. If you're dialed into a scouting report, if you're playing hard defensively, and then you have the emotional win against Carolina. You win the first Duke Carolina game of the year. You make winning plays down the stretch and score the last 6 points of the game to win by 6. Then you go on the road to Miami and just lay an egg. Norchad Omier had hit 1 3 all year, and he hits one from about 25 feet on the first possession, and it's just like you're sunk. I do think there's also something to be said for playing the Saturday game on the road, coming home that night, and having all day Sunday to be at home and to rest, and then having Monday a normal prep in your home gym, as opposed to you play a game on Saturday night, you win, you then, wake up on Sunday, get on a plane, fly somewhere.
The hustle bustle of traveling. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different feeling on your body. It just is. I'm also right there with you with Louisville. Like that I went to Ryan Young. I go to Ryan Young frequently in the Duke locker room because he is such a smart guy. He's always insightful. And yeah, he's I even asked, like, I think I said something like, the pessimism here is you look at this and you say, oh, well, Duke played a team that's in last in the ACC. Like, you guys aren't going to get much credit. And he's like, well, yeah, you can say that, but that team just beat Clemson. And I went and checked my story to make sure I had this right. Clemson's ahead of Duke in the standings by half a game. Like, if that doesn't catch your attention for how dangerous this game could have been for Duke, I don't know what would.
Right.
It's not a matter of this Louisville team laying down and just playing out the season. Like, Ryan even mentioned this, they're, in a way, at this time of year, they're a more dangerous team than some of the teams in front of them in the standings because they have nothing to lose. They're not playing for a resume win. They're not playing for a quad 1 opportunity. I mean, Louisville doesn't care anything about the quads right now. So they're a team playing with house money. That's the same kind of team that Duke beat a week ago with Notre Dame coming to town. Their coaches going out. They have all these, 4th, 5th, 6th year guys that have been to the tournament. They haven't had the season they want to have, but they're not just jacking 30-footers with 20 seconds on the shot clock every possession. They're still playing out the season. They're playing hard. Those teams are kind of tricky to deal with at this time of year. And in some ways they're trickier to deal with than your Virginia Tech or your Wake Forest or your Carolina, which are all searching for these big resume boosting wins. It's sometimes, I know I'm probably trying to sell a false bill of goods to some of the listeners here, but really it is. That's the way the coaches feel. That's the way the players feel. And I'm inclined to agree with them.
Duke men's basketball now has 20 wins on the season, 20 wins in year one of the John Shire era with 3 games left to go here in the regular season. Let's continue to talk about Duke basketball. One player in particular that could really make a difference come March. We'll tell you about that after this timeout here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I absolutely love FanDuel, and I need to tell you that at the midway point of the NBA season, this is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. The NBA is coming back into action later this weekend after the All-Star break, and you can take the opportunity to bet on everything from money line to point scores, three-point shot strain, future odds as the NBA playoffs are getting closer and closer. All of this can be found at FanDuel, and you got to go check out that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back into Locked On Blue Devils here today. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Conor ONeill. So, Conor, I want to keep talking about this Duke team. 3 games left in the regular season. Still some positioning to play for also in the ACC standings for the tournament, right? It's better to have a double bye if you can and not have to play as many games going into ACC tournament weekend. Going deep in the ACC tournament can help your NCAA tournament seeding. And one player in particular has really picked up his level of play. A lot of people didn't believe if we'd see him continue to play after one of those Monday night games, after the game in Blacksburg. But how about the play of Dariq Whitehead, his three-point shooting ability? He's turned into an absolute marksman there from the outside.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was kind of curious
where I was going. Yeah,
I don't want to out your show prep here, but I didn't know that you were going Dariq. I actually thought you might be going Mark Mitchell.
Yeah, I want to save him for later. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting with Dariq. I think what we're seeing is you kind of have to recalibrate what your expectations were for him coming into the year. Like coming into the year, everybody thought he was going to be, correct me if I'm mistaken, but kind of a Jason Tatum, like a primary ball handler on the wing who could do a bit of everything, facilitate, play some point forward almost, get to all 3 levels, score at all 3 levels. I'm not saying that he's not those things. I think it's just the injuries and the stop and go nature of his season has stunted his growth as that type of player in college.
No doubt.
So where he deserves a ton of credit and where Duke's staff deserves a ton of credit for getting him to this point instead of having him, moan or gripe. I mean, we've not heard any whispers of him being a locker room problem in not being able to be the player that he thinks he could be. He's basically become this team's 3-point shooting threat. Tyrese Proctor hit 4 against Louisville. That was a good sign. Like he's really, I saw somebody on Twitter, I can't remember who it was to give proper credit, but somebody laid out Tyrese Proctor's shooting has basically come in thirds of the season. And the first third of the season, he was pretty bad. The second third, he had shown some improvement. This last third of the season, he's really showing to be a knockdown 3-point shooter. But I still think Dariq Whitehead is your best threat on the perimeter. He's got a lot of confidence. You see it. He kind of exudes it to steal a line from Dick Vitale during the Syracuse game. He has this kind of aura about him where you kind of understand, like, he knows he's the guy. That's the way he shoots. That's not always the way he plays. Like, that's not going to be his role on this team. There's not enough time left in the season for that to become his role on the team. But where he really has excelled is accepting his role as a 3-point shooter, as a guy that you might be able to say he's the only guy on the roster that should take a 3 before they get on the court and dribble or make a move or get to the rim. Like everybody else, you want to see play inside out.
Right.
And with Derek, you're actually okay with him coming in. Probably Grandison too. Now that I say it out loud, but those two, you're really looking at. Okay, you come in and you're one of your number one responsibilities is to come in and knock down threes. And the difference is Grandison, that's what he was brought to Duke to do. Like that was his role. That was his, he's in the transfer portal. He is a set shooter. Derek was number one overall recruit and everything. He's also become a set shooter, and he's been really good in that role.
Yeah, it's just for one of those things. You think about March Madness, Connor, and these big games coming up, and you think about the big upsets that we've seen over the years. It just always the three-point shot has been the greatest equalizer, and this has been a Duke team that has really struggled this season from three-point range. And I just feel like if any noise really wants to happen from the Duke squad, that three-point shooting is going to have to be there. And Whitehead has been kind of the leader among them all. Grandison has also been a player who's stepped up. He started taking more shots when he's out there. I don't know why it took so long to figure out that the shooter transfer would shoot the basketball when he came into the game. And you're right, Proctor's shooting has greatly improved. I want to get to Mark Mitchell in a moment. I was just in the mind space. As a former chucker myself, I never saw a shot that I didn't like. I needed to give some love to three-point shooters.
I'm right there with you. It wasn't until like my last year of actually organized basketball that I embraced, like, you can be a pest on defense and you can rebounding.
Make an impact.
I'm 5'9". Rebounding wasn't just for the guys over 6 foot. Like I can get in there and mix it up too. I can't jump for a lick, but I can move people out of the way. So
yeah,
I'm with you on the chucker aspect.
I love it. So we've got this Duke team, 3 games left in the regular season. 2 of them are at home against Virginia Tech and NC State. Has there been anything different about, the play at Cameron Indoor Stadium this year in year one of John? Obviously, this has been one of the toughest venues to play in the entire sport. But as what you well know, even taking COVID-19 out of the equation, the last 5, 6, 7 years, Duke hasn't been as intimidating there at Cameron.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's, I think I talked about this one of the last couple times I was on. That team last year had so much pressure on them to win in Cameron. And it wasn't the fault of anybody. I'm not assigning blame here. I'm just kind of speaking on what I picked up being there for most of the home games last year. Man, every time a team would string together a couple buckets against them last year, you could kind of feel some palpable panic in the room. I think that's how you lose 3 home games last year. The only team that you could say was better than Duke last year was Carolina in that game. And
right.
There was plenty of panic that night when kind of reality set in and the Gestapo looking former players behind Duke's bench, you could kind of sense that there was some turmoil building in that group that Coach K was going to lose his final home game. There's none of that this year. It's kind of free and uninhibited. A couple times this year, we've been standing around and, the clock's ticking down and the warm-ups are going and it gets to 5 or 6 minutes left. Means there's about 9 or 10 till tip when the pregame facilities really kick in. And it's not really been a full atmosphere. Like you can look around at the upper level and there's gobs of empty seats and it usually fills in. Like you look up there and you might start to think, and this happened on Monday night against the Louisville team that obviously not many people are going to get really fired up to come see a 4-23 team on a Monday night.
Right.
But you look up there at the under 16 or the under 12 media timeouts in the first half, they filled in. Like the people are here. It's just, I think it's a little different than last year. Last year, people wanted to be in the building for a really long time. Like, they wanted to make sure they were in their seats to see Coach K walk out onto the court during that final season. This year, like, all due respect to John, but nobody's making sure they're in their seats to see John walk out. I'm not saying that as a slight toward John. It's the reality of what last year was and what this year has been.
No doubt about that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting season there. I think finishing undefeated at home means a lot to this team. I think it'll mean a lot to John. He said as recently as Monday night, these are the best fans in the country. He made a joke about how he felt when he came on his recruiting visit. He fell in love with Cameron and the fans and the atmosphere, and then threw a little dig at Chris Collins, who was his recruiter, and said Chris thinks it's because of his recruiting pitch, and no, it's because of Cameron. But yeah, it's the thing I'm more interested in is how this team plays at home against two teams that beat them.
Right.
That's the rematch aspect of this that I'm really kind of fired up for these last two home games.
It's going to be fun. Virginia Tech on Saturday, NC State next Tuesday, and then, of course, next Saturday, March 4th, we will see the Blue Devils travel to Chapel Hill to take on North Carolina. All right, let's get set for one more quick timeout. On the other side of this break, why the pride of Kansas City, Kansas, Sunrise Christian Academy's very own Mark Mitchell could make a big difference for the Duke Blue Devils here down the stretch. Thanks so much for always making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and first watch each and every day. After this is over, make sure that you go check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. We're talking a lot about selection. Sunday right around the corner, and I'm known to be a little biased in favor of the team in Durham. That's why you got to check out Locked On College Basketball. Those guys keep you honest. Andy Patton and Isaac Shade do a remarkable job letting you know everything about the sport in one place. Plus, make sure you hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. It's Locked On College Basketball, and it's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Conor ONeill from Devils Illustrated. Tell me a little bit about your work. How can people follow you? What kind of content do you have this time of year, Conor?
Yeah, so if you're looking down there at the bottom of the screen, my Twitter handle shows up, Conor ONeill _DI. DI is double meaning. I also cover Wake Forest, so that's Deacons Illustrated. But the Duke stuff you'll want to read is at Devils Illustrated.
Perfect.
Duke.rivals.com, and we're fired up in season right now, breaking down Monday night's game, previewing games. I like to think that I'm hitting on a lot of predictions. I had Mark Mitchell as my player to watch going into the Monday night game, and man, he made me look really smart with like what do you have 10 or 11 in the first half. So
yep, absolutely. Great game for Mitchell down the stretch. Made some plays there to win, and then also, as you mentioned, I think he had 11 in the first half that really kind of paced Duke and set the tone. 5 players in double figures for Duke. Everybody that played had an assist on the evening in their win over Louisville, which was impactful. So I love three-point shooting, as we talked about a little bit earlier. Also, as a lefty myself, I'm going to favor those left-handed players. And so Mark Mitchell deserves a ton of praise for the way he's been playing as of late. What can you tell me about Mark Mitchell, Conor?
I can tell you my dog Bo really seems to I don't know if he's cheering for Mark Mitchell or he's not.
He's feeling good this morning. I love it.
Yeah, there must be a delivery out there for somebody. But man, I've been impressed with Mark. That first half against Notre Dame, I had him. The official box had him at playing 6.5 minutes, and I think he missed one shot and had 0 stats otherwise. Not a rebound, not an assist, not a turnover.
Wow.
Just nothing.
Right.
We found out in the locker room after that game that I can't remember which player it was. I think it was either Flip or Grandison said Coach really got on Mark at halftime. Kind of wanted him to be more assertive, and that's why you see him make 2 threes in the second half against Notre Dame, the big dagger in the corner when it was only a 1-point game. I think that breeds some confidence for Mark going forward. I think you saw that against Syracuse. He attacked off the dribble. it kind of gets lost in the shuffle when you make 13 threes and he doesn't make one of those 13 against Syracuse. But the bigger takeaway I took from the Syracuse game was he had 5 assists. It comes with the caveat that everybody gets assists against Syracuse. You have to get assists against the zone. I think like 75% of the baskets that are scored against Syracuse are assisted. It's always like the worst KenPom measure for an ACC team. But where I look at Mark Mitchell had 5 assists against Syracuse. Mark Mitchell didn't have an assist in the previous 3 games.
Wow.
That was 66 minutes on the court. And then that kind of parlays forward and goes into, I think he had 13 points against Louisville. He even with the missed dunk where he went up, and it was one of those moments you could see half of him wanted to dunk it, the other half wanted to just lay it in, and he's caught between a rock and a hard place and ends up smoking it. I think that's one where you and I you might be able to dunk. I can't dunk. I don't know if I've ever.
Thank you for the assumption, but it's the one thing in life I tell people all the time. If I could do anything athletically just once in my life and die a happy man, it would be to dunk on a 10-foot basketball goal. I don't think I'm the only. What does that feel like? I want to experience it once, Connor.
Yeah, I'd like to have that too. I don't know if it's my number one, but it's up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't say I've ever dealt firsthand with that dilemma, but I know what it looks like when other people do.
We've seen it many times, yeah.
and we saw it with Mark against Louisville. But he played a great game. And he brings another dimension to at least the starting lineup. When he's attacking off the dribble, when he's not playing hesitant, when he's able to get into the paint and create problems. When you have him going to the basket and then Filipowski and Lively crashing on the other side, unless you just like two-hand overhead soccer pass the ball off the backboard, something good is probably going to happen. Like unless you deliberately start the other team on a fast break, you're either scoring or you're probably putting the ball in a position where Flip or Lively can clean it up.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to see, and that's what we've kind of seen for the last 2.5 games.
Really good stuff from Mark Mitchell as of late. Hoping he can have a big impact on the Duke team as they get set for March Madness. Connor, as always, the time is so greatly appreciated. Thanks once again for stopping by the program today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's my good pal Conor ONeill from Devils Illustrated. Make sure you check out his work, duke.rivals.com, for remarkable coverage of John Shire's bunch ahead of March. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for the support of our podcast as well. Follow us on Twitter at @LO_Blue Devils. I'm on Twitter at @JJ_Jackson_. Subscribe to our show on YouTube as you watch each and every day, and leave us a 5-star rating and written review on the Apple Podcast platform. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.